All proceeding at the pace of an infirm, gravely debilitated, very old snail. Oh dear me, I'm so sorry. The Series 1 Jaguar E-Type, this might be one of the most iconic shapes of the 20th century. But is it any good? Should you care? Why, let's find out, shall we? Jaguar, proceed.
Here we are, we'll never be the same, and on the screens of our lives flash words of good songs that we've not yet sung. And we're not worried about the future, and we're not guilty about the past. We're pressing on together, and it's a joy that will outlast these sorrows. And it's not as if we don't have to deal with our...
So welcome to yet another episode of Tweed Jacket Reviews. If you're watching this, it's because I have reached 1,000 subscribers. Thank you. Behind the camera for this 1,000 subscriber special is Mr. Matt Richardson from Furious Driving, whose review of this beautiful E-Type is on his channel as well. Please don't forget to go to that and buy your Furious Driving merchandise too. I do realise I'm wearing a new tweed jacket. The other one I'd had for over 20 years, I've worn in 30 reviews and it's literally fallen apart. So that's the reason why we've got a new jacket, and it's a new year too, it's 2020. And this is a fabulous 1966 Jaguar E-Type 4.2 fixed head coupe 2+2. This car has been lent to us today by the amazing chaps at New Forest Classic Car Hire at Bewley Garage, just next to National Motor Museum in the New Forest. So thanks, Bewley. So before I get into a lot of detail about this beautiful old Jaguar, please take a moment to like this video, to leave a comment below, and to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. It all helps out and allows us to make these videos even faster than usual. So the Jaguar E-Type, one of the iconic cars of the 20th century, and I can't actually believe in some ways I'm actually driving one of these. I never thought I'd be able to get one of these for Jacket Reviews. Was launched at the Geneva Motor Show in 1961. Jaguar test driver Norman Dewis, who is an absolute hero, actually managed to drive a second car from the factory in Coventry overnight to the show, because the public reaction to the press car that was already there was so good that we had to get another car in, and he was the man for the job, and he drove all through the night to get to Geneva in March, so presumably the weather was pretty bad, and he was sustained by not very much food. I think he mainly had oranges with him. And driving this car today, I've got a 5-speed Quave gearbox in this. He would have had a Moss gearbox with no synchrometer on first gear. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he's a bit of the hero. The car is very, very alive. The steering is very direct. I think personally the steering on an Alfa Romeo GT Junior is a bit more direct than this, but this is pretty good. You can feel everything that goes on with it. The engine, 4.2 litre straight 6 engine, BXK engine, originally developed in the late 1940s, and in this particular car it develops about 265 horsepower. In 1964, the 3.8 litre, which was in the early E-Types, was upgraded to 4.2 litres. They both have the same horsepower, but you get a bit more torque, and the torque is developed a little bit lower down the rev range, so it makes it a bit easier to drive. The top speed on an E-Type, well, the early road tested it was 150 miles an hour. That is actually a lie. The press cars, like 77RW, which is a very famous original press car, were tuned a little bit differently, so they had a different final drive in them. So production cars, the ones people would have bought, would never do 150 miles an hour. Maybe 130, 135, something like that. The fixed-head coupe, which this was available from launch, but in 1966 there was a 2+2 model available, and this is a 2+2, although it's really 2 people with no legs. And the car morphed in 1967 into the Series 1.5, so called because they have the glass taken off the headlamps for all markets. It was a thing that the Americans actually said needed to be done, but they decided to do it for all markets anyway. A bit like the rubber bumper MGB, you know, that kind of thing. And then that morphed into the Series 2. Those that have a larger air intake on the front, you can easily recognise them. And there were a lot of other sort of more minor changes between the sort of Series 1, the earlier cars, and the later ones. In 1971, the E-Type got a V12 engine, a 5.3 litre V12 engine that was newly developed. And that actually is not that fast, because the Series 3 E-Types, so-called, the ones with the V12 engines, were very, very heavy. All of those had the 2+2 length of the chassis, so they were all the longer one like this one is. And those are probably the most affordable way into an E-Type these days. The flat 4 cars, which are very early ones from 61, those ones actually are some of the most expensive ones out there. Beauty Garage currently have a 1961 American spec flat 4 E-Type Roadster up for £300,000, which, you know, if you know anything about E-Types, that's not unreasonable, really. Mind you, E-Types do go a lot cheaper. You can actually get an E-Type for under £50,000. That will probably be a Series 2 or a Series 3. I think the Series 3 ones are the ones that are most affordable of all. But this Series 1, this fixed-head coupe 2+2, this car probably is worth somewhere between £65,000 and £70,000, something thereabouts. So they're not actually as expensive as possibly you would have imagined. There has been a softening of price recently, but when you're talking a car like this being worth so much more than virtually anything else that would be available at the time, I don't know, Alfa Romeo GT Genius certainly isn't worth anything like something like this, then you know, that's a relative thing that you have to look at depending on what your budget is for an old car. Bear in mind though, when this car was launched in 1961, it was under £2,000, and these days that's the equivalent of about £40,000. £40,000 would these days only get you something like, I don't know, a BMW 330e hybrid. You know, that's not even the 7 Series BMW. So that's an absolute bargain. And the performance of these cars, I know they don't do 150 unless they are the absolutely, you know, crazy press cars, but 0 to 60 about 7 seconds. That's pretty quick even today. 130, 140 miles an hour in a car like this would be terrifying. Obviously you've got to be a bit more of a hero. That is very, very reasonable. And if you do buy one of these cars, obviously it's one of the most recognisable things of all time. Maybe someone doesn't know the name Jaguar E-Type, but they'll certainly know what this car looks like. They will certainly know the shape and the visceral driving experience of this. I know this is an original gearbox. This is a later one, this quaint particular model we've got here, which is easy to drive for ham-fisted people like me, used to things like keyless entry, power steering, dual mass flywheels, and other things you don't need as a real man. Then it does make it a bit easy to drive. Obviously we haven't got power steering, we haven't got electric windows in here. We've got, well, not very much. I mean, we do have a heater, and that's about it really. We've got these switches are interesting, playing with those and seeing the sort of labels on them. We do have this period motor rider radio in here, and I'm sure you could have had loads of options from the catalogue and things, but really this car is all about the styling, the engine, and also how it drives, and it does drive really nicely. Let's talk about some of the film and television appearances of the Jaguar E-Type. Obviously this is an absolutely iconic car, and I could go on all day about that, but we'll just focus on 3. One of them, of course, would be the Italian Job film, where you see 2 E-Types appearing. One is a black fixed-head coupe. We don't know much about that one, actually. That one has seemed to have disappeared off the face of the earth. But the red Series 1 Roadster, it was an early one, the 12 E-Type to be made, 848CRY, which was damaged in a production but later fixed. That's still around, actually. It's the same colour as this car, and that one is owned by a collector. In the Avengers episode Dead Man's Treasure, which you would have heard a quote from at the beginning of this video, there is another 1961 Series 1 E-Type Roadster. I don't know if it's a flat floor or not. That is 648CYV. That's driven by a group of villains headed by the fabulous Edwin Richfield. They filmed that in 1967. And it's amazing to drive a car very similar to that one. There's also another retype in that particular episode that's a white fixed-head coupe, a bit like this one. And that was driven in the episode by Paul Weston, who was later the stunt coordinator on the Avengers in the final series that they made. But at that point was just doing some driving stunts and drove the Bentley and all sorts of other cars. I think Paul lives around here, actually. He's a great chap if you ever get to meet him. Then in the Avengers episode, Wish You Were Here, there's a character called Maxwell, played by Robert Urquhart. You probably know who he is, a lot of you, who drives a 1966 Jaguar E-Type Series 1 Roadster. Although he gets a flat tyre, so he doesn't go very far. That's I think JLN 4D. There's a car that was used in a few other series too. And then in the Champions episode, full circle, there's another white E-Type Roadster, 1964, driven by the wonderful Patrick Allen. I know a lot of you on my channel like talking about film and television history, and actually we're just about to pass another Avengers location on the right hand side. In September 1966, right at the beginning of what is called the colour season with Diana Rigg, it's normally known as Series 5, they filmed literally inside this door for the episodes The See-Through Man, Escape in Time, and The Bird Who Knew Too Much, with 3 cars from the Beauty Motor Museum. It feels appropriate to be driving a piece of history when we're talking about film and television history, and I love it. One of the features I love about this car is this headlining, which just feels lovely, and so do the sun visors actually, because this is a very, very masculine car. I mean, just look at the shape of it for a start. It's not designed for lady drivers. I could talk about the appearance of an E-Type fixed-head coupe in the 1998 Avengers film, driven by Uma Thurman, but I'd rather not do that because, rather like Diesel's on my channel, as an Avengers fan, I can't tell you about that. One of the things you're going to have to get used to in an E-Type is some of its little characteristics. We've got this mirror here that's useless, that mirror here that's useless, the fact that we're steaming up, and I think the ventilation is this door handle here. This interior door handle looks like an actual door handle on a house or something, but it's not. That opens the door. The little catches on the back for opening the rear windows, that'd be very easy to get your finger cooked in there. We've got a funny little switch down here that says rear window, but we don't actually know what that does. Presumably this car might have had a heated rear window at some point in its life, but it doesn't anymore. If you want to find the sort of headlight switch, it's somewhere here. That will just turn those on. There we go. Got the side lights on now. That'll be safe. But let's talk about the sort of handling of this car. I mean, the suspension, bizarrely, is quite soft. I'm surprised how soft it is. We went over a speed bump just now, and I didn't really feel anything. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I tried to be crashing and banging and things like that, but it didn't. And you know, once you get over the fact that this car is so long that actually you're sitting in the same place as you would in a normal car if you were sitting in the back, and don't try to come out of any junctions, then it's okay. You would get used to this. It does wander a little bit all over the roads, but it's not as bad as some cars I've driven. I mean, I've driven a Bentley Mark 6 Special from 1947 with a 90s body on it, and that was a lot worse than this. And you know, the engine doesn't run as smoothly as a fuel-injected one, but then it wouldn't do. You realise how pioneering this car is. It's got a monocoque construction, it's got subframes in the back and in the front, it's got independent suspension, it's got disc brakes, and it stops okay for such a heavy car. The bonnet is an absolute pain to open and close. It does require two people to do it, and you have to know what you're doing. Later in the review, we'll look at how the rear hatch opens, and that's interesting in itself. But all these things just make the car more endearing and more special, and I can see why, if you were collecting these cars for a living, which of course people do, then you have a ready market for virtually any nice E-Type. New Forest Classic Car Hire, they have this car and a Austin Healey 3000 Mark III and an ACO replica, and you can drive one of these cars for around £200 a day. And the surroundings we're in, it's absolutely beautiful here in the New Forest, even though it's the middle of winter. It just seems like a perfect thing to do. Once you can, you know, master the art of driving this car, using the push-pull technique when you're manoeuvring, and getting used to the triple Weber carburetors, then you will have the most amazing time. And when are you going to be able to drive a car like this, apart from actually buying one, if you don't, you know, use a place like New Forest Classic Car Hire? Once you get over the fact that this car is worth an awful lot of money, and where you're sitting is actually where the back seat is in most other cars, it's actually not as scary as you would have thought. Obviously, this is a car that goes out in hire all the time, and you know, we don't have too many horror stories about it. So yes, please go and hire an E-Type if that's what you want to do. It is an incredible experience to drive. Anyway, let's now take a look at the Series 1 Jaguar E-Type's more practical side and have a look in the boot. You might wonder why I just slammed the door, but actually I was told to do that. They don't do that otherwise. It is an old car. Opening the back is an interesting little thing. It's a bit like opening a bonnet on a normal car actually. We have a stay that goes like that, and once we're in here, the boot's very shallow. It's a bit like a Ford Capri actually. The shape tails down so nicely that actually there's not a lot of room for luggage in this car, though it's better than a Roadster. The boot floor does have a spare wheel underneath it. We'll show that in a cutaway in a second. As you can see, we've got our filming equipment in here for the day, and it's actually not too bad. This car was clearly designed with weekend getaways in mind for two people, although if you're planning on moving house, then I don't think it's going to be suitable for you. Just close that to early hatchback. Now, because this is the E-Type 2+2, there are actually back seats in this car. However, the way you access them is a bit scary because there's absolutely no catch on the seat at all. So I suppose if you have an accident, you die like a man, with your face straight in the middle of the Jaguar steering wheel, and there's no legroom whatsoever. Obviously this was aimed at somebody who had very, very young children indeed, or possibly somebody who was carrying around quadriplegics. Because this is an E-Type 2+2, the doors are actually a little bit longer, so it is a bit easier to get in, although it's still not easy. Once you're in here, actually, driving position's quite good. It's better than, I think, an Alfa Romeo GT Junior, which would be a car of a similar type and a similar era. Handbrakes are very unusual design in that if you actually put the button off, fly it off, it sort of rubs against the rest of your fingers, which takes a bit of getting used to. Got a 5-speed gearbox in this car. This isn't the original gearbox. That would have had a Jaguar 4-speed unit in it. Earlier cars had what was called the Moss gearbox in them, which didn't have synchrometer on first gear like a Morris Minor. Those are a little bit difficult to drive. They call them the crash gearboxes for a reason. This later 5-speed unit is a bit easier. It doesn't feel that dissimilar, again, to the one fitted to an Alfa GT Junior, which again was a 5-speed car manual in 1963, which is very impressive, really. Like a GT Junior, it's very, very low driving position. As I said, not much room in the back. Lovely interior though. This is one of the nicest things I think about an E-Type, is the interior. We've got loads and loads of gauges, ammeter, fuel gauge, oil pressure, water temperature. Got a very small clock that doesn't work. We've got even kind of a warning light for the brake fluid. I don't know how effective that is, but there we go. Headlamp dip switch for some reason on this side. It's not on the floor like in a Morris Minor, but it's not, I'd say, the easiest place to go. Tiny little spindly indicator stalk, again a bit like an Alfa GT Junior. Very clear Smith's gauges in this car. Looks a bit like, I don't know, Lancaster Bomber or something, with all these gauges all lined up and they're white on black. Everything doesn't quite fall easy to handle because we've got these identically sized toggle switches all the way along the dashboard, and you have to read the small writing quite carefully to know what's going on. So we've got the starter button in the middle, that's a bit like a Jaguar Mark 10. Cigar lighter in the middle as well. Obviously, if you are Terry Thomas, and you are going to have to be smoking, aren't you? We've got the windscreen washer there, and then the wiper with 2 speeds. No intermittent wiper, obviously. This is, 1966. Then we've got the heater speed here, fan speed. I can't see it, but the temperature is right the way over here, opposite the choke lever. Obviously this has got triple Weber carburetors, this particular car, so there is a choke lever, which I didn't use very well when we actually first started filming the interior shots, but never mind, you won't see that, or I hope you won't see that. So we've got cold and hot. Once you get used to it, I'm sure it's pretty easy, but it does look a bit intimidating the first time you drive the car. Obviously, you can hire this car at a New Forest classic car hire in Bewley Garage, and so, if you want to try to fathom these switches yourself, then you can. Another aircraft-inspired touch of this car is the seat belts. I think these are contemporary Britax units. Now, there's no inertia rail on this, and by 1966, when this car was made, seatbelts were compulsory to be fitted in the front. You didn't have to wear them or anything. That didn't come in until 1983. But you did have to actually have them fitted. And the procedure for actually getting this thing on and strapping up does feel like the stewardess should be telling me to, look where my life jacket is. But so there we go. That will do loads of things when we crash into a wall, I'm sure. You've also got in this car a period correct Motorola push button radio. No tape, obviously, it's a bit early for that. Even early to A-track actually. Then we've got some speakers in the rear, which I don't think are actually contemporary with the car. And we've got a glove box here. Let me see if I can get my secret mission documents in there. Oh, it's locked. Whoops. 1 second. Ironically, the plot of the Avengers episode Dead Man's Treasure is about people trying to find some secret mission documents. And this glove box is so secret that we haven't got the key for it. So we're just going to have to put this on the shelf there. Never mind. So this car doesn't really have much in the way of storage. There's no door pockets here. The glove boxes, well, we don't really know. But there is actually a cubby underneath the armrest, which to me seems incredibly modern for a car from 1966. So that's good. The back seats in this 2+2 model really are, to be honest, probably going to mainly be used as a storage area, and that's quite handy, I suppose. There's no cup holders. There's nothing else in there. I mean, this is a car for driving, not to put Starbucks cups in. So in terms of ergonomics, my head is right up against the roof. Almost. I'm 5'11", so I'm not even particularly tall. The backrest, well, you can probably recline this as to whatever you like because it's not actually fixed in a position. This car does have a slightly more bolstered seat for the driver in it. This is the more standard looking seat. The forward visibility is okay, although you're so far back in the car that when you're coming out of junctions, that's going to be terrifying. Wooden rim steering. This looks a bit like a motor leader steering. I don't know if it is, but it is a Jaguar replica of one or whatever. You don't want to crash in this car, obviously, because that's going to go straight for your chest, which is nice. So just be careful when you're driving. I don't know why I'm saying that, but there we go. At this time this car was made, in 1966, there was no speed limit on the M1, so people did use it as a test track. I'm sure Jaguar did, AC certainly did. So although this car won't quite do 150 miles an hour, as we know those early press cars were souped up a bit, you could still probably do about double the legal speed limit in this car. And actually the position is not too bad. The pedals are quite small and offset to the right, but that's not unusual for a car of this era. The gear change is quite nice in this Quay 5-speed, not the original gearbox of course in this car. The seat's reasonably comfortable. I can imagine you can go quite a long way in this car and very much enjoy yourself, although it's not going to be anything like, say, a modern BMW. So then, what do I think of the Series 1 Jaguar E-Type? Well, if you're prepared to put up with one or two ergonomic compromises, as you can see there, then you'll be enjoying one of the most iconic cars of all time. I actually think prices of these cars are quite reasonable for something in this condition. Obviously the flat floor cars are right off the charts, but it's incredibly enjoyable to drive. It's absolutely beautifully engineered, and you can actually say that you've ticked something off your bucket list once you've actually hired one of these at New Forest Classic Cars. Oh dear me, I'm terribly sorry. Well, somebody must have changed that other sign before we got there. Somebody's cheated. It's not my fault if people are dishonest. Thank you for watching this episode of Tweed Jacket Reviews. My name is Joseph Lloyd. I'm an independent vehicle consultant. I find cars for people. Please subscribe to the channel if you'd like to do that. Don't forget to like this video and to leave a comment below. If you wish me to source a car for you, I'd love to do that. My website is www.lloydvehicleconsulting.co.uk. Please use the Contact Me page on my website to get in touch. I've got a Facebook page as well. It's facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting. Thank you. But is it any good? Should you care? Why? Let's find out, shall we? Jaguar, proceed. No!